here we go onto the desktop. Well, not quite the desktop. All right. Yeah. So we have a lot of news to cover today. It has been big for Windows and Linux, and it's been a little weird, I gotta tell you. It's actually been a lot weird because this has happened, and most people know, I try to stay away too much from the tinfoil hat stuff. But this latest development kind of, I don't want to say it solidifies my opinion of Snapcraft and that type of thing, but it definitely just makes you go, So I want to start with the first story of the day, which is Windows Calculator on Linux. And you may be thinking, who cares? It's a calculator. But what it means, probably nothing. But I at least want to just show you what's happening because it's quite funny when we go. So here we are on my desktop. Windows Calculator on Linux and the Uno platform. As far as Twitch goes, if you guys are looking for live streams of me on Twitch when it's just kind of like no game plan, I just usually just throw up a game and play. It's usually whenever I have some free time. And I've been trying to do it once a week, which is hilarious. But anyways, Windows Calculator on Linux via the Uno platform. This is basically, Uno brings it into Linux using Snapcraft. And most people know Snapcraft's a proprietary closed source backend. So what this means is there's a way to take a lot of the Windows type components that Microsoft's making for Linux and bundle them into one spot. I have not seen Windows Calculator outside of the Snap Store. So this is kind of interesting as far as what this means going forward. Is open source Windows Calculator only going to be on Snapcraft? I imagine since it's open source, people can bundle it for other packages. I just haven't seen it. It was very interesting that they thought, hey, Snapcraft is the place to put it off the get-go. And the tinfoil hat theory here is Microsoft will buy out Ubuntu. And people have been saying that for years. Whether or not that'll happen, this kind of like, it would be a neat little bundle. It would be like just tying it all up in a bow for us if Microsoft did buy Canonical. And they had their own proprietary store to basically have in Linux, which is, if you're unfamiliar, the Snap Store and the Ubuntu Store is technically, I think, better than the Windows Store on Windows. So this is kind of an interesting story to see how Microsoft's integrating with Linux and how it's kind of getting in, I would say. I would say it's got its hooks in real good. And to see this collaboration and putting through, it's interesting. But a link is in the description if you want to read this whole article. It just goes over how it's actually integrating into all the Ubuntu releases. And anybody that uses Snap can obviously use the Windows Calculator. But, I mean, come on. That's going to be like 5 people. So that's where we're at with this story. I've also been working. There's a little bit of chat, when it comes to the start of the stream. Some people were talking about the chat API and doing like a lot of the Twitch type integrations, which I'm always really interested in. And a little bit behind the curtains here, I'm trying to get an application approved through Google's API. I was denied on the first round as the membership program, which if you click the little join button down there, you get like badges, and also your comments get highlighted to me in my dashboard so I can easily reply to members' comments on YouTube videos. And also in chat, you can have special emojis, which no one ever uses. But I wanted to integrate those members into my members portal. And I tried to do an API directly to pull the members list directly into a hidden membership on that portal to where they'd have the same privileges as everyone that supports me over at portal.christitus.com. Still working on that because I do want to provide better value for the actual YouTube membership. Not ready yet. My first iteration, it took about a week, and they denied me first publication of that rights to grab from the API. So I eventually will get that done, but I'd say the timeline for that's about a month or 2 months. I thought it was just kind of an interesting tidbit about YouTube's API and its improvement on the chat and live stream functionalities that's coming. The why I say it's coming is because it is going to be just a lot of stuff happening. So going forward after that, we also have some other things. The next story I wanted to kind of touch on is 20H2. This is a new release of Windows, but not really. It looks like they just kind of fancied up some stuff. Very few features were added to it. I'm curious to see what happens as far as the 20H2 release. It came out this past week, I think on the 13th. I've looked at it. There's not too much to go over. I don't even know if it's worthy of a video. That's why I haven't really like jumped on it. I wouldn't like on the release day go, oh, 20H2. Because they've done like, I think 19H2 on the past where it just kind of cleans up some of the UI elements, and some of the improvements were just not very big. So it was kind of like a non-starter of an update for me. I might do like performance benefits, but I just didn't see that much in the background to really justify it. So that's why I didn't really talk about 20H2 at all. If you're still on 2004, which honestly, this is more of a bug fix release than anything else. And I'm curious to see what happens with it. But 20H2 is something I'd say is safe to upgrade to, but there's really no point to upgrade to it because there's really not many features as far as like the start menu gets reworked a little bit. Some of the taskbar stuff gets also changed. The big thing I hated about 20H2 that came out this week was they finally sunset getting to the old school system menu. Most people know that if you go into Start Run, you can type Control, pull up the old school control panel from like Windows 7, and go into all the old menus, which still have a lot of functionality and basically how I still get around Windows 10. They removed that old school system function, which I knew they were eventually going to do that, but again, I was just sad to see it go. So 20H2 is not my favorite update, which isn't surprising in the slightest. Because let's be frank, most people know a lot of times the Windows updates, I'm just like, meh. But 2004 I thought was decent. If it didn't have so many bugs, it would have been a really good release for feature set, because they did do WSL2, which did have a drastic performance increase for Windows binaries and Linux. And then also the some of the integrations and actual performance, actual display performance was improved in 2004. It's just the bugs that came with a lot of the improvements were substantial. So you get a mixed bag when you search that on YouTube. But going to the next one, we've got a new release for the Linux folks out there, the Linux KDE folks. This was a big release this week, and I will be making a video on it probably today. I'll make it. I might release it on Sunday or Monday, depending on how fast I'm able to actually fix it and get that all edited. But this will be coming out probably late this week to early next week. But check this out. Absolutely amazing. When it comes to KDE, it's Plasma 5.2 that came out. If you're an Arch user, you can already get this. If you're a Debian user, you can always download the official distro of KDE Team. And if you're not familiar with that one, it's KDE Neon is what it's called. And you can just go neon.kde.org. You can see it up here. Let me get rid of my bookmarks. This is actually, if you're a huge KDE user and you like Debian, and you want to stay on that, by all means, KDE Neon's just like an Ubuntu fork, and it's a pretty solid distro if you want to just do KDE for those that don't really want to tinker too much. This is a solid release, and this would be updated to 5.20. You can actually go to download, and you'll see that the user edition, the stable version, was released on 10/15. So that was actually yesterday was when they updated this distro. So if you're interested in the newest KDE, that's cool. Here is the improvements, though, getting into it. This is a fantastic video, which I probably could play, but YouTube, we're not going to replay it. Definitely check it out, though. I love how well designed this video was. It was very, very good. The changes was KRunner, which is like a spotlight for Mac users, or Windows doesn't really have a search that floats, but it's a floating search basically in the middle of the screen. You usually access that with the Meta key or the Windows key and spacebar, and you can pull this up, or Alt spacebar, and they now have removed it from the top. It used to be docked at the top, and now they put it kind of in the middle, so you can actually do it aesthetically a little bit better, which is nice. Task Manager also got reworked, which is really nice. This update, I can't say, most people know I already liked KDE. This update just solidifies why I think it's one of the best, if not the best, desktop environments out there. They've also been working a lot on the back end, because some people said they had problems or bugginess with like NVIDIA cards and stuff. They keep improving every single release substantially, leaps and bounds, which is really, really neat to see just in the past year or two, to see how far KDE has come. System tray, on-screen displays, KWin, which is the actual window manager. All this is really, really sweet. Check out this if you're a big KDE fan. They have done so much with this newest release that it's amazing. And they even added some more Wayland support, which Wayland sucks. Don't use it. Use Xorg if you have the option. If you don't know which one you're using, chances are you're using Xorg. But that was interesting. In the same vein, though, for the Windows users out there, PowerToys from Microsoft, which is interesting, they've actually started doing tiling window management built in, which I've started tinkering with this, and dare I say, Microsoft's actually done a good job here. It's actually really functional on Windows systems. On every Windows system I'm on or I work in, I will install PowerToys. And I will make a video on this as well, kind of going over it, because there's a lot of different things you got color picker. FancyZones is like the tiling window manager, but it's not quite a tiling window manager. It's like this hybrid where when you're dragging, it lists the zones, and then wherever you drop it, it'll actually do it, which is really neat. I actually love this feature, but it's like they took the inspiration from Linux and integrated it right into Windows. Dare I say, this is amazing. And actually, PowerToys was, correct me if I'm wrong, chat, XP, or was it 7 that had PowerToys before? I remember using a PowerToys add-in to give more functionality in Windows, but this one is well done. A lot of the add-ins. So FancyZones I've been playing with. File Explorer, you can do a lot of native add-ons and preview panes and stuff. I hate the preview pane in Explorer on Windows because a lot of times it'll lock files, which is terrible. But it does have other things like image resizer, which, man, that's okay. That's a simple thing. Keyboard Manager, I was just railing on Microsoft Windows because when I'm in Linux, like right here, I'm like, oh, you know what? I need to pull up this and this. Okay, cool. And then I need to quit out. Everything's on a hotkey, and there's no global hotkeys that really are affected in Windows. Well, now they've fixed that, or at least they're trying to integrate that, which is amazing. And I got to tell you, this is actually pretty good. Like I said, I'm constantly installing this package on every Windows system I have to be in, because they've added so much Linux functionality to Windows with this package. So the keyboard manager is big, where you can get global keys, big ones, quitting apps instead of doing Alt F4 because it's like just not intuitive, because you're constantly having to go the full length of the keyboard. Doing like a Windows key Q, much like how I've set it up on Linux, is one big one, and then launching specific applications using that, also big. Power rename for bulk renaming things. That's cool. You don't have to download more third-party software. And just like here's PowerToys Run. Look at this. This is a complete ripoff of Spotlight, and also what we just talked about with KDE redoing KRunner. PowerToys Run is that thing. I just it's nuts how how this is all happening, but at the same time, I like to see it because that means Windows users will now actually have a lot more productivity tools and things that there's a reason why I'm using Linux day to day because of productivity. Every time on Windows, I'm like, oh, this would be so much faster if I was in Linux. And with these tools, it is actually improving my productivity. It's still not as good as Linux, mind you, because I'm able to integrate quite a bit more, but the fact they actually are taking these functions and integrating them, I can't say enough good things about. So doing that, a little guide, and some other stuff that they've actually integrated in. So if you're a Windows user out there watching this, go to GitHub, Microsoft, download PowerToys, because this is very nice. For those still stuck on Windows, by all means, or if you have to use it, there's a lot of great features in there that I highly recommend. But I just wanted to cover that real fast. How is everybody doing? I also wanted to go into chat. If there's any questions, I'm gonna go ahead and pull up my chat here and get it going. And yeah, it has been a great week for me lately. I've been trying to get everything done, finishing up a lot of the things at my day job, which has been great as far as getting everything there. I told everyone, I think it was last week's stream or a week before, everything at my day job is now almost brand new. I've replaced everything in a 44U rack, and down to the switches, gateways, servers, everything is now less than 2 years old. So I was like, heck yeah. That means less support calls, less things, everything just works. It just works. At least that's what I like to say. So, because that's such a nice thing. I used to, I think those that have followed me on Twitch, you know, Don in chat, Sudi, David, I see. You guys have known back on my Twitch live stream days, there's a lot of times where I get live support calls from my work quite often. And as I've slowly been able to switch everything out, I've gotten less and less support calls, which is great. I love that. But it's been an ongoing process for sure. Oh, man. When will I be able to see or get KDE? It depends on what system you're on. If you're on like a Kubuntu or a KDE spinoff that's not Arch-based, it'll take a little bit to get downstream to you. I highly recommend KDE Neon for the Debian users. And then obviously if you're on Manjaro or Arch, give it like maybe a week, if that. Arch is always so fast to update. It's always the bleeding edge, but you know, it just depends on what you're doing. So how long should I wait for the 20H2 update? Check to see if there's something in there that you want. When it comes to Windows feature updates, I can't reiterate this enough, and I constantly get this, and I always go on a tangent or a rant on this subject, because there's a big difference in Windows between feature updates and security updates. Feature updates aren't necessarily an improvement. In most instances, it just introduced more bugs for features you don't use. So check to see if there's any features you even want out of the update, and I always recommend staying back at least 1 or 2 feature updates. In business, I'm still on 1809. I always stay on a stable channel, and I do that through group policy objects. So whenever I'm on a Windows system, the worst thing you can do for your users is, let's say you manage 1,000 users, is to force feature updates. It's an absolute system admin's nightmare to do a new system update. So any system admin out there that's worth anything knows, hey, you never want to be on the bleeding edge of Windows. You don't want to be running feature updates within years. So a lot of times we'll be delaying those feature updates 2 to 3 years typically. Most system admins do at least 2 years. We can actually push them back a little bit more depending on the release cycles, but that's usually the sweet spot for Windows. You always want to be about 2 years behind on the feature updates. I'll never say you should update to this feature update. I might say, hey, here's some new features. If you want to be a guinea pig, go ahead and do the feature update. Security updates, completely different thing. I only delay those 4 days. And you might say, well, that's a weird number. Why 4 days? And it's always this. You may have heard this if you're in the IT field. I'm sure you've heard it. Patch Tuesday. Microsoft has always released patches on Tuesday. Now, if you go 4 days from Tuesday, that's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So that gives me 4 days for Microsoft to pull a bad update. And then also it's a weekend, so all my systems will update on a weekend. And that gives me time where people aren't going to be in the office per se. And I'll be able to go in on like a Sunday or a Saturday without any downtime to them and fix whatever problem that update caused. So it's a twofold thing. One, delaying the updates usually is able to filter out any bad updates. And then once in that blue moon where there is a bad update that made it that 4-day delay period of time, I'm able to do it on a weekend and not affect the business. And that's the biggest thing, because when it comes to IT work, it's all about that. Whenever the business goes down, I'm calculating usually by the minute how much that's costing the business. And you take, let's say, I'm in a law firm right now, pretty small business, but it's the same time I calculate it's probably costing them anywhere between $5,000 to $6,000 per hour of downtime. When I was an IT director, I had 72 hours of downtime, and that multiplied over the course of that company, which was about 2,000 people or 2,000 users, that cost them roughly in the neighborhood of $1 to $2 million for that downtime. So there's a huge amount of IT that revolves around that, and you always factor that in, and that's why security updates, and that's kind of the sweet spot what I've settled on and what I like. So